We're going to start our discussion at the beginning, which is prehistoric art. Now, for the purposes of this course, I don't really rely on dating as a testing method. So, if when you're taking one of your tests online, um, I'm never going to use like specific dates as a means of identification. I think for an intro art history course, it's a little cumbersome. So, what I do is I actually ask you to recognize time periods and then subgroups within those time periods. You'll see what I mean when we go along here for a minute. So, again, if you're looking at some of these dates going, oh man, I have to memorize all these, you should know them. You should have an awareness of where you are in time, but again, for testing purposes, I think it's more important for students to know time periods, right? That's going to be the generalized knowledge that you're going to walk away with and be able to use around other people, right? Now, to give you a sense of where you are in time, prehistoric is a very long time period. It's about 30,000 BC, to about 1500 BC. And again, these are rough dates because most of the dating we do for prehistoric objects is using the carbon dating system. So you're usually dating rocks and things that are going to have a larger time span of dating. So there's not a lot of specificity that you can get with the carbon dating system. And so you get these larger time slots of dating when you look at prehistoric identification, for instance. Another reason why I don't really fall back on it as a testing method. But again, if you're thinking about where you are in history, this is a huge swath of time they're going to be talking about. And I'll break it down as we go along right into its components, right? Or again, its subgroupings. So, what does prehistoric mean? It literally means before history. It's prehistoric. And what does that mean? It means that it's before the written word. So, it is before writing, it's before documentation, it's before history was written down. It still means stuff was going on, things were happening. We just have no record of them. So, if you think about this, when I talk to you as an art historian about this time period, I'm kind of having to guess based on, of course, evidence, but I'm having to make my best guesses or my best hypotheses, right, based on the information that I'm getting. But no one wrote anything down, so I can't say with 100% clarity or certainty this is what happened. I actually think this is a good thing for art historians to learn because often you may not know what the motivation of the artist was. You may not know why a piece was made. And so I say to my future art historians, right, it's good to be able to think about using your critical thinking, looking at something and making a guess based off what you're seeing. For instance, if you just look at this object, you're looking at a painting of a bison, right? So you can then start to extrapolate from there. Why would people draw animals? Why would they do that? And then perhaps you could make the leap to, well, they needed food. There was no drive-throughs, right? So no public subs. So what are you going to do? You got to go out and hunt and kill and get your food. So again, by looking at this and then thinking about what are the needs of the people, you might then say, okay, this makes sense to me. And I would say prehistoric people were basic needs people. They were like, am I meeting my needs? What do I need? They aren't very high on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs scale. They're going to be pretty basic in what they need. But again, this is before things are written down. This is before we have documents. So it is prehistoric. And again, you have to infer and look and think very critically about what you're seeing and then make guesses. But then on the other hand of this, you can never be 100% certain that your guess is correct because no one's there to verify it for you. So you have to sort of let go of control of information in a way that I think you don't have to with later objects. So keep this in mind throughout the course, really. Now, what are the subgroups, right, of the prehistoric? They are the Paleolithic, the Mesolithic, and the Neolithic. What you see in common, of course, is the term lithic. Lithic means stone. So when you hear the term Stone Age, this is the time period where you would say there's a Stone Age. Now, Paleo means old, old Stone Age. Meso, middle, middle Stone Age. Neo, new, new Stone Age. Nothing all that fancy when you actually know what the words are. So don't let these terms throw you. Once you know what they mean, you'll find they're actually quite simple to use, right? A lot of this is just having to have the information. So I would say don't let terminology scare you. Figure it out, right? Find out what it means. And often it's pretty easy old, middle, new. Now, the Paleolithic, the first of the time periods, this is from around 30,000 BC to about 15,000 BC. Again, these are very rough dates, and scholars disagree about the time frame sometimes. So, again, don't take it really to heart. This is when we were nomadic, we were tribal. And so we were walking around in small groups, usually about 30, 35 people. When I'm in a classroom, my classes are capped at 35. And so I often say, look to the left, look to the right. This is your tribe. These are the people that you're going to be mating with, working with, building your lives with. Hope you like them because that's what you get. So very, very small tribal groups, nomadic in character. Why were they nomadic? They were following animals primarily for their food. So cave paintings are going to figure in very big to our discussion of the Paleolithic. They have to go where their food is going. They have not yet settled down. They don't have agriculture yet. That's going to come in the Neolithic period. So again, they have to go where their resources go. And then I would say, this is a very basic way of living. So again, when you think basic needs, Paleolithic people are the essence of basic needs. And they're often thinking about the roles of their people divided by gender and through what is necessary to keep the tribe moving, working. So for the Paleolithic man, I would say men, they were hunters, they were out procuring the food, and women were usually gatherers, and they were also related to fertility of the tribe. So they were having the children and the babies. And there's a great book called The Moral Animal, and it gets into how in a sense, we have these urges or jobs or drives that come from very, very early on in our human existence of development. So they often relate like the idea of sports for men today as being relatable back to hunting. So where does that drive get channeled to if you no longer have to go out and like kill a bison or, kill a deer for your food source? What do you do then? You hunt down a little ball that's bouncing down a field, right? Um, for women, gatherers, right? It's said that, again, oh, they go out and buy stuff and they, stock their closets. Again, some people say this is sort of, oh, maybe it's a little bit too gender defined, but I think it's still interesting to consider perhaps how the basic urges of humans, they're still within us. They haven't been bred out by climbing Maslow's hierarchy of needs or, evolving, let's say, intellectually, that they're still sort of deep down inside us somewhere, needing to be fulfilled, right? Might we say. So those are Paleolithic people. Mesolithic is the transition period. And I don't speak to you much about this because there's not a lot of art from this time. So again, I'm very brief in what I say about the Mesolithic. It's really a transition. It's a middle between moving from nomadic to Neolithic. So Neolithic, and again, Mesolithic's about 15,000 to about 4,000 BC, we give as dates there. Neolithic, about 4,000 BC, and we always point to 4,000 BC as the start of civilization for humans. So if you're interested in the idea of like when did we actually become supposedly quote unquote civilized, about 4,000 BC is thrown around as the date that happens. And Neolithic people, they begin to settle down. And as I put it, create what we still recognize as culture or society or civilization today. They settle into fixed encampments or cities. They start to think about defense, things like putting walls up. They develop agriculture. So if they're going to be in a fixed location, they want to think about like how do you actually have a food source that's reliable. They domesticate animals for the same reason. And they start to think about like, law and order, people having positions within society or jobs, let's say, and having to keep everything together, having to keep everything running smoothly, having a leader or a ruler, having laws, right? Having punishments. And in this period, they actually start to think a little bit about spirituality and the afterlife and, what's beyond this, the esoteric questions, might we say, the bigger questions. Paleolithic people, we assume they did not ask a lot of esoteric or spiritual or larger questions because they're focused mainly on survival. So Neolithic, we see the bigger things starting to be thought about, like when someone dies, like what happens, things like that. So I wouldn't call it religion as we understand it, but it's a spirituality, it's a religiosity that's starting to form in this period. So Neolithic, I would say it's very interesting because I still look back at Neolithic people and see the echoes of who we are today. We still build towns. We still like defense and gated communities, right? We still have jobs. We still have leaders. We still have laws. So a lot of what we recognize, we can trace back to Neolithic people.